So now, to tell you a little bit more about the actual accreditation process, we estimate that it's about 4 to 6 months, but it really depends on where you're at in the process and the resources that you have to commit to it. Although it sounds like there are lots of great resources in this community to help you prepare for that process, both through Social Prosperity Wood Buffalo and Pauline O'Connor's support. So in June is sort of when you submit your participation agreement and receive access to the online application. And then in June and July would be when I suggest you start identifying your point people. One of the things we heard from the participants in the pilot is that it was very helpful to have a small task force of people, because they're also, again, more engaged in the process, but you may have someone who knows more about HR or the financial accountability pieces in your organization or the board governance, and it also helps you bring your team together to work on some of these things. I think it can be a bit of a professional development and team building exercise too. And some organizations engaged board member as well, if that's appropriate for your organization. So really, again, what you need to do is look at the standards and determine what have you got in place already, what do you need to put in place, and what do you need to refine that you may already have in place but hasn't been looked at in a while. So then around July and August would be when you start populating the online application form with all the materials that you've pulled together with your team. And then throughout this whole process, myself and my colleague Karen Alabon at Imagine Canada will help you access resources and samples from the resources that we have available, but also from other participants in the program and previous participants that were accredited. And then September, October is usually around the time when you'd want to, if there's anything that you need to run by your board, new policies or processes, you'd want to make sure you have an action plan for getting those things lined up so that they're ready by the November 30th deadline to submit your application. So, just to give you a sense of what the pilot participants said regarding the time involved in the application preparation stage, we asked them how many person days we thought that they thought it took them to prepare everything, including, revising, creating policies, connecting with staff and getting sample resources and that sort of thing. And the majority said it took them fewer than 60 person days. And then over about a third of them said that it took them between 10 and 30 days. And again, it really depends on how far along you are at the outset, where you're at the outset. So the second phase of the accreditation process is the application review and approval. So that after the applications are submitted, staff at Imagine Canada will look at them to make sure everything's complete, all lined up, you've got everything ready to go, and you're in the best shape possible to be accredited. And that you're also, the application is in good shape for the peer reviewers to assess your compliance with the standards. And then in January, February is when we'd assign the peer reviewers. And there's 9 peer reviewers on each panel, although we will be scaling that up. We just had 1 peer review panel for the pilot. But we will be looking at recruiting more peer reviewers for more applications. And then, so the peer reviewers are then assigned the application. Each application has 3 peer reviewers. And then they do their individual assessments, and then we would report back to them on areas where there might be compliance or consensus gaps, and they meet in person around the end of February to make the final accreditation decisions. Not necessarily final, because, well, I'll tell you about that in a moment. Right now, in fact. March is when the accreditation decisions came down, and now this was a lot of work in the sense that staff reported back to each applicant on the outcome. If it was straight out accreditation, that was a fairly simple congratulatory letter. However, a lot of organizations were maybe had a few, there was a bit of a continuum in terms of compliance. So there might have been a few organizations that had small number of things that they were missing that required a little bit more work based on the peer reviewer's assessment. And the peer reviewers were comfortable with those things coming back to staff. So organizations were given an opportunity to come into compliance, told sort of what was missing, where they needed to come into compliance, and and then they were, and that's usually a shorter timeline because there's not as many things to pull together. But there were also a few that had, well, there were about 6, I think I mentioned, that had a number of pieces that they needed to work on. That takes a little bit longer to come into compliance, and we support the organizations to do that. But those applications then need to go back to the peer reviewers because there were just enough things missing that the peer reviewers felt that it needed to come back to them before they were accredited. So phase 3 is really the time between your accreditation and your renewal 5 years later. Which is, once you're accredited, you sign your license agreement and begin using the trust mark on your, some organizations are using it on their social media sites, and their annual reports, their fundraising materials, their website, again, to demonstrate to donors that they're accountable and transparent and have met the standards. But during the 5-year time, we do require organizations to commit to submit an annual compliance form to demonstrate that you're still meeting the standards, and the compliance requirements may be related to areas where we found some soft spots in the floorboards or potential soft spots in the initial accreditation. You'd also be required to participate in an audit or a spot check if you're selected for one. And we said that would be about 3 to 5% of organizations per year, and that would be an on-site audit. And oftentimes it would be on the recommendation of the peer reviewers, or it would be because there have been allegations made in the media or complaints, that kind of thing. And then, of course, you'd be required to participate in investigation of complaints if there's been a complaint made about your organization. But the complaints process is really we have a complaints process now for the Ethical Code program, and one of the first things that's required, one of the standards is that you need to have a publicly accessible complaints process, and that anybody who has a complaint needs to go through that process first, of course. And then basically what we would do is if we receive a complaint, we do a little bit of an investigation, and usually it would be an education to come into compliance. It's not a penalty oriented program. It's about capacity building and education. However, if it's an egregious issue, then you could be at risk of losing your accreditation. So then in the final year of accreditation, that's when you would begin preparing to renew. So as I was saying before, accredited organizations are given access to the trust mark by signing a license agreement. This is the trust mark here. And really the success of the initiative depends on the uptake in the sector and on public awareness of and trust of the program, which is why we're making efforts to publicize the program through mainstream media. And oftentimes when issues arise about the sector in the media, Imagine Canada is often called to comment, or it might initiate a public policy initiative, and it often comes back, or it often relates to one of the areas that is covered in the standards. So that's something that we are talking about often in our conversations in the media and the public policy level. Okay. And then this is the fee chart, which is also available in the handout and on our website. And the goal of the program is to have it self-sustaining through fees in 5 years. It's currently not self-sustaining. It's being subsidized by gifts from Great West Life, London Life, and Canada Life, which is all one company, as well as BMO, KCI, and an anonymous donor. The fees, as you can see, are scalable, ranging from a low of $200 for the application and annual license fee up to $4,000 for organizations that have more than $25 million in annual expenses. So here's a quick view of the timelines for the next slide, thanks. Which I've already more or less mentioned. We've launched the program. June 15th is the early bird deadline to submit your participation agreement to get access to some free resources. There's an online My Risk Management policy and My Risk Management plan that you can use to help develop your plan and policies, as well as a training video site. And then from June to August is sort of the application preparation and support, where staff provide support to organizations. You work on pulling your materials together, and staff work with you to provide you with samples and resources and tools as you identify gaps and needs in some of the areas of the standards. And then something that organizations found really helpful last year, and in fact we found it helpful too, is that we had individual teleconferences with each application to review their, well, not everyone took advantage of it, to be fair, but most organizations did take advantage of it to do a preliminary review of the application, to make sure that you're on track, you have everything lined up, and then if there's anything that you feel that you need to prepare, you still have time to do it before the deadline. So the last thing I wanted to mention is that, and I mentioned it previously, is that Social Prosperity Wood Buffalo is interested in supporting organizations in the community in working towards achieving accreditation. I believe that Nancy can speak more to that, but if you think it's something that you're interested in, then I encourage you to assess your practices against the standards and talk to members of the steering committee, which I think were identified at the beginning of the session. And then if you have any questions, I don't know if we have time for questions now. I'm not sure we do. But if you have any, okay, I'm guessing not. Nancy's looking at her watch. If you have any questions, I'm going to be here for the rest of the day, but my contact information is here. You can call me or email me, and I'm happy to respond to any questions about the program, or if you're looking at the standards and you have a question about a particular area, then let me know, and be happy to help you out. But I heard Don Scott say at the awards ceremony last night that he came to Wood Buffalo for the economic prosperity, but he stayed for the community. And I think this is the reason why you invite people to live, work, and play in Wood Buffalo. I'm not sure if that's Wood Buffalo's tagline. Somewhat. Is it? Okay, or maybe an informal tagline? I heard it quite a few times last night, and I thought it was quite good. So based on what little I've heard, I've only been here for a short time, it's pretty clear that economic prosperity on its own isn't sustaining a healthy, vibrant community, and that the people involved in charities and nonprofits here are the ones that are really making a difference by blending the economic with the social prosperity. And I just want to congratulate you on all your efforts. I'm really excited to be here and to learn more about what you've been doing on that front. Thank you.